This is Skype Power Radio and TV Services Studios, West Yorkshire, Leeds, till Mount. My name is Mustafa Jame in studios saying good day, good afternoon, good morning, good evening to you wherever you are on this planet Earth. As flagged up on our page that we'll be having Honorable Mr. Bakari Bunja Dabo, BB alias, for Gambia for All. I think Gambia for All party leader, if I may put it, or Secretary General, with us here in studios. Like we mentioned, viewers and listeners, we would like to welcome you all on board this special program. It's going to be a discussion between a senior statesman who has more experience in the system before and the system nowadays, which is Honorable Bakar Dawo. My name is Mustafa Jame at the seat. First of all, Mr. Dawo, I would like you to introduce yourself, say hello and hi to our viewers who are listening at the moment now. And then from there, we'll get into the program proper. It's going to be a discussion between humanly discussion. Mr. Dawo, welcome on board for the second time on Skype or radio and TV services. Thank you.
Well, I think you have actually done the introduction part of it, but I use the occasion to say hello to you and to hello to your listeners and to express my delight to join you for the planned discussion this evening.
Thank you, sir. The discussion is going to be based on mainly something that you know, your experience, your expertise about the Gambia before and nowadays in the Gambia in certain areas. Mainly, we'll start with the when it comes to Gambia in a form of independence before and nowadays. Your experience and your knowledge about Gambia independence before and nowadays. Are we still independent?
Oh, yes, of course. I would say we are independent. We have been independent since 1965. But of course, independence has to be understood in a relative sense. Independence in the sense of being responsible in charge of our running our own affairs. We are independent. But there is a certain degree of dependency, in other areas. And that's not only unique to Gambia. We talk about an interdependent world. So, yeah, in relative terms, yes, we are independent. We have been independent since 1965.
Right. So the dependency side of it, what caused that dependence? Like the Gambia is independent, but virtually, yes. But remotely, if you look at it in some context or detail, you might say we're still not independent. Like when it comes to feeding and things of that nature, the basic standard of living. Are we still independent when it comes to that?
Well, I will tell you what I understood by interdependence, and that is in the way things are in this world, whether the economy or even in politics, there are a lot of things that we need to do, but which we can only do in partnership or in cooperation with other parties, other countries, or other organizations. In that regard, there is interdependence. That is the sense in which I use the term interdependence, and that in itself constitutes a certain degree of, should I say, not being 100% independent. I told you independence has to be understood as a relative term.
Okay. One thing that I would like to think is key in human living or standard of living or human beings to even think of going to work or that sort of thing. It's like the feeding side of it. Are we independent when it comes to feeding ourselves? Eat what you grow what you eat. Are we independent when it comes to that in that aspect?
Well, I think you know very well that we do import a lot of what we eat in the Gambia, but actually that doesn't necessarily detract from our independence. There are many countries who have got to who import part of what they eat. That is not the issue. What is issue is perhaps what you call food sovereignty. That is where we have the means. We have the means to be able to meet our our food requirements either by growing them or by buying them. But the mere fact of not being able to grow all what we eat doesn't necessarily detract from our independence, and that is not the, 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 the criterion for determining whether we have got what I call it food sovereignty.
Okay, food self-sufficiency is something that is key in human life. So if I may ask you, in the Gambia, we've got fertile land. Then before, in the Gambia, in the 70s and 80s, there's this thing they call irrigation farming, rice production, millet, and all that things has been happening. And then that contributes to some extent, if I may put it that way, to some extent that the price of commodities or the price of rice or the importation of rice is minimal. You were in the government then before. So how did you do it to be able to achieve some of those things, while you were in government? How did you do it? What do you know?
Well, I must make one thing clear that even at that time, we weren't self-sufficient in the sense of depending on only what is grown. Importation of food, particularly rice, has been there even before independence during colonial times. There is no doubt about it. But all the same, yes, I think I understand what you are hinting at. That is that the dependence on what we grow for our feeding was perhaps less than
Before than
yeah,
nowadays?
than it
Yes.
is. And there are a number of reasons.
For
One is
example,
one. I think I would say one of the reasons is, of course, population has greatly increased, and unfortunately, the production hasn't kept the pace of the increase in population. On the contrary, it has even dropped. If you go by statistics, the production of rice, reached a level. Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics ready at my hand, but by what you observe in terms of production, it has considerably gone down. Going around the countryside the past 1 or 2 years, you see areas that had been traditionally major rice production areas, particularly in the CRR, what we call the Central River region, on both banks. I went to Kayai, for instance, which was one of the traditional major rice importers, and I remember the elders told me that they have abandoned, and this comes all the way down up to the level of Nyamina and Salem. A lot of the rice fields have been abandoned for a number of reasons. One is I would say it's the investment in agriculture which has really dropped down, because the problems are, one, insufficient extension support, problem of good quality seeds, but also question of helping them dealing with saline intrusion, saltwater intrusion, and also things like pests. I think all those are reasons why, unfortunately, the production has, in some areas, gone down as much as ceasing to obtain. I think that is the reason. At a time when as I said, the population in the country has increased considerably, so that the difference between what we need to import to make up the deficit in our production is considerably increased over the years, and now it's quite high. I think really this is what I say would say that the agricultural production has gone down very seriously, is most dramatic, particularly with cash crops like groundnuts. There I know the figures were up to 140,000, 150,000 tons in the up to 1994. Now we're talking about only 20,000 tons, sometimes even less than that, for groundnuts. Rice, I don't have the figures, but I'm sure that proportionately you have a similar, comparable decline in production over the years. And I put this down largely to, as I say, drop in the amount of resources invested in the sector by the state in support of the producers. And the result is that, of course, production has gone down very badly.
So, in summary, the state is to be blamed for what is happening now, the lack of food insufficiency in the Gambia. The state is to be blamed.
I would say the state has to be blamed for not maintaining the level of investment that is needed in agriculture. Yes, and that has led to drop in productivity and in actual production over the years. Very, very remarkable drop. Yes.
You think we can remedy this?
Of course, it could be remedied, could be reversed. I mean, if the main cause is under investment, well, you try to remedy it by providing that investment that had been lacking, and of course, using it effectively. Because, as I said, the under investment was one of the factors. Is not alone. There is also the effective use of resources that are put in. Over these years that we have seen serious decline in agricultural production. That same period coincided with a huge increase in development assistance into agriculture. There's a lot of projects announced. A major unit within the Ministry of Agriculture, I think they call it Projects Coordinating Unit, has even sprung up. A lot of investment comes in, but unfortunately, through embezzlement, through mismanagement, much of that those resources don't really reach the destination, the farmers. So it's not only voting or securing the investment resources, whether from local sources or from outside, but also making sure that they are actually used effectively and that they are not lost through investment, through stealing and whatnot. Yeah. So, I mean, lost through embezzlement, There's been a lot of resources coming in, and you don't see the product, the you don't see the results in terms of the increase in production.
So there is embezzlement going on. That's the factor leading to this. Would you say?
Oh yes, there is no doubt that it can only be that the resources that come in are not effectively applied, and a lot of it, could have been diverted from source through lack of resources. I mean, there are so much, evidence out there in the field. I mean, the president himself admitted that fertilizer, for instance, which are one of the key ingredients into agricultural production, imported into the country, finds itself sold into Senegal. Even as recently as last week or so, I think I had the Minister of Agriculture even putting out a warning is don't sell the fertilizer. Now, the question of who does that and who are involved in that is a different matter. But the fact is that this is a case of resources coming in but not getting to destination. There has been a major scandal in 2000, I think 1 year into this Barrow government when Gambian fertilizer, which had been obtained from Japan, I believe, considerable quantity, was caught up in Senegal by Senegalese security forces. Sold to some Senegalese operators to take it to Senegal, and the Senegalese authorities lay hand on it on the grounds that they found the fertilizer had expired, so it should not even have been used, and that was traced back into the Gambia. It led to the government, after the press had wind of it and blew it up, for a statement to come out and say, well, some people have been arrested, some permanent secretary and some officials have been arrested, There was a change at the level of the minister himself, whether himself was involved. But anyway, those things were announced. But up until today, one hasn't even heard about any trial of those cases. This was in 2018, 2019, from their store in Soma, in Jara Soma. The fertilizer was caught in Senegal. This is all a fact. The following year, a similar scandal was announced in the North Bank, I think Kerawan also. Some fertilizer was found finding its way. And as recent as this last 2 weeks, I had it. Being warning people don't sell. So I mean, this is well known. It's not well. It's well known, absolutely.
Okay. Are they taking us for granted, or are they serious about this current government? Are they taking us for granted?
Well, I think that's for each of us to form your own judgment about. I'm just telling you what is out there as a well-known fact. It's a well-known fact that fertilizer meant for the Gambia being part of the resources, which, as I said, is a critical factor that has been missing. It gets diverted, and maybe it may not only be fertilizer, maybe other things also subject of diversion, embezzlement, one form or the other.
Your
My
experience.
point here is that there's been, for anybody who's been following the situation closely, there's been a steady increase in donor funds to agriculture, particularly from FAO, UN, and even some other non-governmental organizations. There's been a considerable amount of it. Now, if in spite of that, we don't see any increase in productivity, on the contrary, we see a significant decline, it's only logical to come to the conclusion that what has been coming in has not all been going to reach the farmers where they're expected. And on top of it, I've been able to cite to you instances that were well publicized, which are well known, of at least one critical input fertilizer imported into the country, sometimes on technical assistance as a gift basis, or sometimes maybe paid for by the government, but we find their way outside of the country. This is well established. No, no question about that.
Don't you think this is a serious matter?
Of course, it's a serious matter. It's a serious matter. I mean, as I said, the government itself announced that the permanent secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, or one of the permanent secretaries, because now they have many permanent secretaries for every ministry, one permanent secretary, and I think some other officials have been actually said to have been charged for criminal offense. And the minister, who was then the minister, was removed, although it wasn't said whether but it was around the same time, and whether it was over the matter is not made clear. So that's a serious matter. But then that matter, 5 years down the line, we haven't heard of any trial or of that matter being brought to a conclusion. So we assume that the will is not there to deal with it.
You've been a diplomat for a while. So that fertilizer thing that was intercepted by Senegal, what sort of bilateral relations is there to be able to get that resolved without getting into any interference or sort of?
No, it didn't need any diplomacy there. It is a clear cut case. As I said, it found its way into Senegal, and the Senegalese security apparently became interested in the matter when they established that the fertilizer was expired, and as expired chemical product it wasn't meant to be used. So I thought that's how they became interested in it. And in their investigation, they found out that actually the source of it was Gambia. And through normal cooperation between the two countries in the areas of justice, in the areas of fighting criminality. They informed the Gambian authorities about it, and the Gambian authorities has confirmed that yes, fertilizer has been missing, which led them to actually indict some people.
If this was before, how would you have resolved this, Gambia, before? How would you have resolved this case?
Oh well, well, when you say before, I mean, as far as I know, as a matter of principle, but also as a what was the practice when I was in the government, or in the government in which I served, the 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 the, the the practice was that such matters would certainly be handled, through the courts, and the element of criminality suspected would have to be tested there. If the court confirmed that it's an offense, then they will, of course, will perhaps proceed to convict people who are involved. If, on the other hand, the element of criminality is not established, it can still be considered a major administrative fault, and some administrative measures would be taken against whoever is in charge or is responsible or involved in it. The government I served in had a very good reputation for that. Unfortunately, we didn't have as many such glaring cases, but for those cases of similar to this kind of thing, we never hesitated. We dealt with them very seriously. I can think of the cooperative movement, which was a major activity during those years, and there are a lot of people who worked in the Ministry of maybe in the cooperative movement who ended up in jail whenever cases like that came across against them. Then there was a major, perhaps the first biggest agricultural development project was called RDP, Rural Development Project. That it also, there was some hanky panky discovered somewhere down the line, and it led to a number of people being, either tried, put into courts, or administratively fired, including a permanent secretary who wasn't accused of stealing anything. That was not like he personally stealing, but it's just that it was established that his supervisory role that he didn't perform it if satisfactory, and he was dismissed. Oh yes, I mean those kind of actions, those kind of failings are never allowed to go unpunished. Of course, we operated within within a in accordance, complying with the rule of law. We didn't do it arbitrarily. We didn't jump on people. Whenever a complaint comes up, it is put through to the police for investigation, and then if there is on the face of it prima facie likelihood that a crime has been committed, we put them through the courts. But that was very very consistently the practice throughout the period that government was in office.
The government you were in then, at the time, the Dalasi was good. How did you manage to do that compared to nowadays?
Well, the strength of a currency or a Dalasi or any country's currency is a reflection of the strength of the economy itself and the level of its level of reserves. Now, in the case of the Gambia, you talk about the period when the Dalasi was $4, the pound was four to the, no, the Dalasi was 4 or 5 to the pound. That was reflecting what the economy was, not so much in terms of the size of the economy. It was much smaller then, but the macro economy, which is the key aggregates, were very much strong and very healthy. Now, what has been happening over time is that the Dalasi, reflecting the problems of the economy, has been declining in value. over time, and that's why we've got where we are now.
Okay, so is it got to do
In
with
a
buying?
way, it's a result. It's results from the quality of managing the economy. The economy is managed effectively, seriously, then usually you manage to have those essential macroeconomic conditions maintained, and that also is reflected in the value of the currency you have. But now the Gambia, on over the period, actually it's not only now. It's really the slippage started very seriously under the dictatorship of Jammeh, and the present government has announced its intention to reverse the situation. But I'm afraid in many areas, particularly in the exchange domain, things have not improved at all for our currency.
Gambia is the only place where you go to corner shop, you'll exchange. If you go with a pound, you go to Dipakunda or wherever, or Bambo, you'll exchange that sort of thing. And that's been going on for a while. Don't you think that's another factor leading to the control or the depreciation of our money?
No, it doesn't make. No, that's not. That's more the result of the problems we have. That's not the cause. That's the result of
Okay,
the.
what is the cause then?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The economy, the production that should lead to we getting the foreign exchange, foreign reserves to the level that the economy needs. That production is failed to materialize, so that the demand for foreign currency is very high, and the demand for the conversely, the Gambia's dollars, it drops in value. You see, I mean, for instance, we the commodities we import are all, most of them are priced in U.S. dollars or foreign currency, anyway, U.S. dollars mainly. Now, where the the economy, the size of the economy, the reserve position of the economy doesn't uh, enable the dollar to maintain its balance, it falls against the dollar. It means that it takes us much more to buy the same amount of quantum of dollars you needed to buy the bag of rice. That's why the bag of rice that before, the difference in quoted in dollar terms has not been that dramatic. It's been increasing, but not that dramatic. But the dramatic part has been the drop in the relationship between the dollar and the dollar. It's because the dollar has been dropping in value compared to the dollar. That's why it takes you so much more, double or three times the same amount of dollars to buy a bag of rice than you used to buy in the past. And that's why you hear, you know that with a joke to talk about government promising that they will bring down the bag of price of rice. They cannot, because that is not within their powers. That depends on the strength of the currency, and the strength of the currency depends on the strength of the economy. If the economy is in where it is, the dollar will continue to be weak.
So would you say that's a joke then?
Yeah. To think the answer is for for a government to use its powers to say we're going to cut down the price of rice like that. That's not a serious talk. We know that that's not how things work. You have to increase productivity in the economy, make the economy stronger. The value of your currency will go up. That way, you will be able to obtain buy goods at a much lower, because then because your currency is stronger, it can buy compared to the currency in which the goods are sold, it can buy more. You either do that, or as sometimes has been mentioned quite often, to be serious about actually increasing local production, whereby you can get the food, the rice, without having to import it.
That makes sense.
But that of course often much easier said than done, because there are also a lot of things in that also. It's not that easy. Of course, now this is very much, if you listen to government statements, both at the president's speech to parliament and other speeches and other things, there seems to be renewed interest in increasing food production in the country as a way of trying to solve the food problem rather than depending on importing. And of course, that also, if you do that, you also help yourself. You even help the Dalasi, because then it will mean your need to import, to use the amount of money you need to import will be much less, and it means also that also will be reflected. It's because of supply and demand.
Precisely. Telecommunication. Gambia used to have one of the best telecom system in Africa, if I'm right. Then you were in government. How did you manage to do this?
Well, we really didn't have to, invent any new system of doing it other than the standard system of good, effective governance of that particular sector. When we set up the Gantel, it was a new experience, because before then, telecommunications was handled as a government department, by a government department, working in collaboration with a foreign private company that handled the external telecommunications, whereas the domestic telecommunications were handled by the government's telecoms department. But when we combined them and set up the Gantel, well, we just deployed the kind of technical staff that we consider needed, and so put them on the a management team, giving them encouragement. When as time went, we learned from experience that we need to reform the parastatal sector, including Gamtel, by giving the organization even more autonomy in running its affairs, and also insisting on transparency in its operations, to operate pretty much as a commercial entity. That was when Gamtel really started to perform very well, extremely well, that as part of the parastatal reform. Now, unfortunately, what happened again under the dictatorship, it was a rollback of that policy of leaving the company to be run efficiently, expected, of course, to pay tax and dividends to government as the owners. They rolled it back, and you had, during the time of Jame, with so many things, Gamtel and Ports Authority and all those profit-making SOEs became the milk cow for Jame, for all of the crazy things you had been. We forced them to do all kind of things. This starting with the television and the radio, which he likes to brag. they brag about as one of the achievements. Well, it was Gamtel that was forced to go into very expensive loans to buy the equipment to start the television. So it's the country might have benefited by having a television service, but the cost of it nobody is looking at, and that went into ruin Gamtel's, contribute to the ruin in Gamtel's financial situation. Of course, it continued, because they didn't only stop at forcing Gamtel to provide for the television and the radio services, but it also got to a point where Jame would actually dip his hand into their resources. Gamtel, Social Security, Ports Authority. I'll tell you an interesting anecdote. During the Jane Commission, I listened to it myself. One of Jame's long-standing, what they call them, Secretary General. In the evidence he was giving, he gave us an example of how Jame operated. He talked about one day when in his office, he, the Secretary General, heard that Jame had with him the Gambian ambassador to Qatar plus some Qatari investors. That's how it was said to him. Maybe he might have telephoned Jammeh's secretary, and the secretary told him, "Oh, the president since morning is busy. He's got the Gambian ambassador and some Qatari businessmen." And of course maybe that's how Jammeh operated. So he said he stayed in his office until the Secretary General stayed in his office until later in the day he was called upon and that Jammeh wanted him. And when he got to Jammeh said, "Oh, well, we've been discussing with some businessmen, Qatari investors. We are going to set up some, I don't know, some feed mill somewhere on the way to Denton Bridge. There's a ghost thing standing there." And Jammeh said, "Oh, I was discussing with them and we've agreed we're going to joint venture, Gambia government plus them." It just actually shows you the erratic, the crazy way you can take an important decision. Like, how can a president, alone with just your ambassador, meet with investors and take such an important step? And he said, "I want $1 million from Ports Authority. I need $1 million from Social Security, maybe another million from Gamtel or some other." So this is how the parastatals, not only Gamtel, were ruined. They forced them to produce $1 million like that. So that is really what has
Yeah, but
contributed to
Mr.
that.
Dabo, if I
Yeah.
could remember, you did work on the Jammeh.
Yes.
Under what capacity and why? You know that he is this kind of person, and why did you?
Yes, that's interesting. I didn't know he was that type of person. I didn't know that. If I had known, I wouldn't. I didn't know. No, that was the very first 2 months of Jammeh's assumption of office, and it was a very difficult. The way I saw it and the way it was seen by many people, the country was in a very critical situation. These military have come, they have forced the situation on the whole country, say they have taken over the country. And nobody, felt that this will actually knew how to go about things. And to my misfortune, they seem to have settled on me and said, no, you don't go, please continue, because I had been Minister of Finance, continue with your work. Well, I thought that, well, if it could help, because a very critical area, the economy, but also if it could help me to maybe have some influence in getting them to minimize the damage that their presence was going to cause, I could try it, give it a try. I gave it a try, and after about 2 months, exactly 2 months, 10 days, I left because I found out that they were not serious. And I think to put it in a very short, they weren't serious. Then in fact, I didn't know, and I don't think they have not really shown their full colors about the corruption it was more of not being serious, not being amenable to be guided. And that was really how far I went with them. Only 70 days, and I left them. So it wasn't that I knew.
So, why you left? Why you left?
Why?
Yes.
Yeah, I found them not to be serious. You see, the whole idea was that I came in to impress on them that a situation is the reality is that they had taken over power, but they needed to commit and work towards handing over power back to the constitutional order, because that was what the country needed. I thought I was aware that the risk of non-constitutional governance over any extended period. And it was on that basis that I said, all right, if you are going to be amenable and you needed assistance, I will be around, particularly in the critical area of finance and economic affairs. But it didn't take me more than a month, 2 months to see that they are not serious about what they are saying. It became clear that they didn't want to, for instance, hand over power. They indicated initially that they would stay for 4 years, that kind of thing, contrary to what earlier on they had promised. So that's really where I felt I wouldn't want to be there, giving them to take advantage of whatever my own name and reputation got them, and yet I wouldn't get them to do things in the national interest. I considered, I saw through that these are not there for national interest. They're just so they're just greedy people who wanted power for themselves. It became quite clear to me. In less than in 2 months, 10 days, I came back from Dakar because I had, left the country during the coup. They convinced me, they appealed to me, convinced me, did a lot of things. I came down in August, September, October. On the 10th, I resigned.
Interesting. Mr.
So
Dabo.
that's a long thing. I mean, that will take itself a whole interview of three hours. But it's not important. The summary of it is that I was quite convinced that these are not serious. They weren't serious. Their whole agenda was anti-national. It was just power for themselves. And unfortunately, very sadly for my country, this became clear as time went. That's how my own association with them went.
Okay. Civil servant. I think some would say civil servant is the backbone of the government. And the Gambia civil servant was one of the best. Was it in Africa or somewhere? But nowadays, if you look at the civil servant, I think is, would you say next to none in Africa? Civil servant. How did you manage to regularize that, to have that sort of reputation or that good name for the civil servant? I'm struggling to see your face a bit. Can you?
Now, best in Africa is difficult. I don't know whether any comparative studies have been done, but certainly it was a fairly effective civil service we had.
Yes.
First, we inherited a bit of it from the colonial civil service. What I say a bit in terms of principles, in terms of principles like the independence of the judiciary from political interference, and also the the the, the primacy of professionalism and merit in getting into the civil service and getting promotion within the civil service. So those were cardinal principles, values, which we inherited the civil service with from colonial order. And one of the primary policy we did was to maintain that, continue that. That is the way to continue. The civil service should be independent, and we should step up its professionalism, do everything to increase its professionalism through training and allowing the civil service also to appointments to be done on basis of professional qualification. I think those were some of the things we did that went to provide incentives for good performance on the part of the civil service, even though, in terms of remuneration, salary was very low, much lower than what it is even now. But people were felt sufficiently motivated.
Yes.
I suppose they also thought that the leadership, they saw the seriousness of the leadership, that it is calling in it when it calls for doing it for public service. They are sincere because their own actions, the actions of the political leadership was consistent with that. They weren't saying do this for public service and doing something them different themselves. So the leadership provided good motivation, but also put on policies which created an environment which was conducive to good work. Because
Sorry, Mr. Dabo, there's one thing here. We're struggling to see you. Maybe have you got any lighting behind there to switch them on? Because I can't see you. I can't even see you.
Let me see if I can help you, my friend. I have to change position then. Is it any better now? Is it better?
Yes, it's a lot better compared to before. Yes.
You want more light? I can increase the light.
Yeah, please, if you can.
Is it better now? Is it
Yes, it's
better?
now perfect now. 99% good now. Yeah.
All
So
right.
civil servant.
Yes. So I was saying that the strength of the civil service was firstly the policy, uh, the policy environment within which they operated. One which gave premium to professionalism and also guaranteed its independence. When you say independence, it may not be subjected to political interference. All right. Everything in the civil service was done pretty much on the basis of professional requirements, and an independent and respected public service commission is established, put in charge of critical decisions like selecting, recruitment, disciplining, and such matters, so that the civil servant, you get promoted or you get disciplined and sanctioned depending on what your professional competence, and also what you might have done that just went out of the way. And on top of it, also, most have been the the motivation that's derived from the political leadership of the country, where the leadership is seen to be serious in its appeal to civil servants, the population generally, to work for good public service. Of course, that also went along to give them the right kind of attitude. So that really helped produce, of course, underpin also with steady training, even though we didn't have many institutions of training institutions, but through external cooperation with external organizations, particularly the Commonwealth and United Nations, we made sure that to the extent possible, we afforded the civil servants good training, and even for training and that kind of thing, selection also done on base of merit. If it's for general studies, there was what they call a scholarship advisory committee, which was also sufficiently independent, which selected people, strictly speaking, on the basis of merit. If it is in the training part, not the academic studies, but training part, that's also handled in similar manner, pretty much geared towards taking decisions, selections on basis of merit. That's really the kind of environment which our
Create.
policies
Would you say create? Yes.
created and sustained.
Create
Created,
and sustain. But
yes.
nowadays, if you look at it, what went wrong? It doesn't look like what is created and then sustained is what is happening now. What went wrong?
Well, there may be many answers to the question, but I know for sure that a lot of things went wrong in the area of the climate, on the environment in which the civil servants had to work. For instance, the independence was taken away when recruitment, promotion, discipline changes were pretty much the political decisions taken at the highest level, at the level of Jame and a small coterie of people there. So that result one was a high turnover of civil servants being kicked out. To even the normal standards that had been set for appointments were neglected. For instance, a typical case is the position of uh, divisional commissioners. I think now they call them governors, who are the backbone of regional administration in the Gambia. These were seen as senior administrative positions for which people had to be prepared professionally and also educationally. You have to attain a certain level of education on a certain level in the civil service to be qualified to appointed as commissioner. What we've seen on the jam is that he took that away from the civil service,
Is
and
it is it the same thing, the same trend that's going on with Barrow region? Would you say?
well, let me complete what I'm saying. I'm saying that the standards started to go down very badly when, by political political decisions. I wouldn't even call it policy. This what was good practice was jettisoned, and people began to be appointed as commissioners purely for political reasons, so that it's not only the the moral authority of the commissioners, but the actual performance has to fall because they don't have the level of education. On the contrary, it's all for political convenience. What you've seen is a proliferation. So, for instance, they began to make it a practice that every commissioner has to have a deputy or even two deputies. The civil service was blown. It was blown into in size. Jobs that normally you don't need more than one person. You now have two or three, four people do it, just to create jobs for the boys. And again, they still have the Public Service Commission in effect. I know, but I think increasingly many people will agree that they don't have they are not have it's no longer their prerogative to do most senior appointments. They are done, or perhaps even given a directions to rubber stamp appointments, but the real decisions are taken at the political level. So that has, over time, one of the reasons really which have brought down the effectiveness of the civil service, its efficiency, and also its whole respectability, its prestige. It's now become not what it used to be in the past.
So the reputation is not good at all. Would you say nowadays?
No, well, I don't know. I would rather you use the words I said, the prestige of the civil service, prestige attached to the civil service as a career, as a profession, is taken big a beating compared to what it used to be before. Well, that's how I would put it. Yes.
So, what are your thoughts on then, like civil servants following the president on the tour and that sort of thing? And then, is that the way it used to be? Like civil servants following the president wherever they go? Is
Well,
that
well, during that, well, the period we are talking about, the period when I was in government, yes, the president undertook several trips, but the main one, which is a countrywide tour, was called Meet the Farmers Tour, was specifically geared to enable the president to meet the farmers at a critical state period in the cycle, or even the farming cycle, to have a first-hand knowledge of what's going on, how farming was going on, know their problems, and deal with them as much as possible. So whenever the president undertook such tours, he would take along people, some civil servants who might have some knowledge about what he's going to discuss. Essentially, this will be veterinary staff, fisheries staff, agriculture extension staff. Also, there are other areas like health and education where he would also take along maybe some civil servants. Rarely more than one or two ministers, the Minister of Agriculture, the Minister for Environment. Those are the two also who normally went with him. It was on a very, very different scale from what it is, and it was very much business oriented. The president interest when he went out on those tours was to actually meet the farmers, meet with them, and deal with their, listen to what they had to say. That is really how it went. It's very different from what you now have. I think, in fact, Jame, in fairness to him, I think he even changed in the nomenclature to meet the people's store. So he increased he opened it up. So what you are now having now is called meet the people's store, not even meet the farmer store.
you think all this can be resolved? and how?
What could be resolved?
The civil servant, the behavior that's happening in the civil servants, and the way people act, and the way this political appointment in the civil service. You think this all things to bring back that good name, that good reputation, is that possible?
Well, to the extent that some of the wars of the civil service, uh, caused by the change in policy or abandoning the right policies that had worked in the previous period. Well, to that extent, yes, if there is a change of attitude, change of policies, yes, you give the civil service a chance to get back on its feet. But as long as you don't have a change in policy, well, we are not likely to produce very different results.
Your thoughts on President's statement earlier on against lawyer Usainu Dabo? Any thoughts? As the leader of Gambia for All Party.
Well, Gambia for All as a party really hasn't come out to take a formal position on it. There were communication cell. I had I think they came out with a statement deploring the inappropriateness of the statement, in the sense that they found that not the kind of language that they expected. They said so, and I don't really quarrel with that position. But if you ask me my personal opinion,
your personal opinion about the statement, yes.
Well, yeah, I also found it not only strong in language, but I don't know whether it appeared to me it didn't address the point that had been raised earlier. You see, from this distance, the way I follow developments, that it started with the leader of the United Democratic Party saying, expressing concern that he had reason to believe that property which was part of government property had been converted to the president's to become to had been converted to become the property of the president. But Hussein Dabo said he wasn't sure. He was inviting Barrow to clear the air and say, is it true that the land or property in question, which at one time was used as official residence by the Chief Justice, but the important thing is not that Chief Justice owned it or not own it. It is government property, just like the government has a number of properties along that area in the South Atlantic. That property is now in the ownership of the president. So my disappointment is that when Barrow set out to respond to that statement, he didn't clear that particular issue. Is it true the property is in his ownership? If it is true, how did he get it? Is it the proper thing? I think these are the issues that Hussein Dabo raised. But Barrow took offense from his statement. He offended by the kind of threat he said in Hussein Dabo's statement that if UDP were to come to power, they would recover that property from him. That was really the main focus of his own reaction, and said, in any case, he didn't think Hussein Dabo would live long enough to be around by the time he leaves office, something along that line. So my own comment, if you ask me, I say, well, look, yes, okay, that's up to him to believe that, it's okay, but it doesn't answer the point. Still, is the land, the property in question, in your name? If so, how did you get it? Is it the proper thing for you to get it? See, considering that this is government property. You see, it's not like the rest of state land, which is held in trust by the Ministry of Local Government, and which it can give out to people out of, the land tenure system in the Gambia. Land is held in trust by the government, by the state, and through the Ministry of Local Government, they carve out from time to time what they call layout. Let's say an area, a given area is carved out, and plots out of it are given to people, pretty much along social criteria of not more than one plot to any Gambian who needs it, to the extent the number of plots available. So that's not the kind of land we are talking about. This is land which already been allocated to the government, to the state, for its own use. Just like a state can own an aircraft, the state can own a car. So that is state property. So how for that now to be said to become Barrow's property as president, that is the issue that Usaino Dabo raised. Is it true, as he had, that was the case? If so, is it the right thing? So my disappointment is that Barrow's own reply didn't address that issue, that aspect. What it addressed was the implied threat, according to him, that Usaino Dabo would take that plot from him if UDP were to come to power. So, but that is what it is, as far as I'm concerned.
On that note, Mr. Dabo, I'd like to thank you. Before thanking you, your final thoughts today on our program. Your final thoughts.
Oh, well, to say that, building a country or a nation is a continuing process, and sometimes it does hit a rock and suffer a setback, and I think that's perhaps what happened in the case of the Gambia. We hit a big rock back in 1994, and it's about 30 years, and since then we haven't really we stumbled, but we haven't risen to our feet properly and resumed the progress ahead. And the challenge that Gambians should see is this is what they should see as our challenge. That we should know that the country has suffered this major setback, and now the challenge is for us to see how best we can get it back on the mark to move forward. It's a challenge to everybody, to the leadership, but also to the population. It's a challenge to the people in the sense that they need to select the right type of people to provide the leadership. Because if the right type of people are not there to provide leadership, well, then it will be very difficult for the country to get back to its feet and continue its march forward. And unfortunately, the system we have now is leadership, democracy. The leadership is chosen by the people. So the people should take that right to be also a big responsibility. You have the right to vote, but you also have the responsibility to vote seriously and in a responsible manner, and contribute in selecting the right type of leaders, and not choose people on the basis of irrelevant considerations like religion, ethnicity, and whatnot. Because if you do, you are likely to leave continue the situation where the country will be in the hands of people who may not be able to provide the direction that things need. So that is my final thought that I would want to share with Gambians. It's more of a reminder, because I've been saying it and other people have been saying it, but it's just that it's still very relevant, very pertinent that we remember this point.
On that note, Mr. Dabo, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, energy, and effort for honoring this invitation. Thank you very much, Mr. Dabo.
We wish you luck. Thank you, Mr. Jame. And I wish you and your team good luck in your very important role of trying to using your organ to provide information and advice to your listeners.
The only thing is your surname, Dabo Kundanko boy, or Drone Kotinya, but no one day.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is that so? Okay, all right.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye bye. Right, viewers, Sky. This is Sky Power Radio and TV services from Studios West Yorkshire. I'd like to say thanks to Mr. Honorable Bakari Bunyadabo, the Secretary General for Gambia for All Party. Well, pass the message on. This is where we'll draw the curtain for this special program that we had with Mr. Dabo. At the seat, my name is Mustafa Jame behind the seat. Thank you to all for your comments and contributions. Was highly welcome. Thanks for sharing the message, passing the message on to viewers listening at the moment. We'll draw the curtain here today for this edition of this special discussion with Bakari Bunya Dabo. My name is Mustafa Jame at the seat. Good evening.